Yeah. I think that this is everybody. So, all right, so I'll call the warrant committee meeting to order because we have quorum. So we're missing Jeremy, Amanda, and Christine, but Christine won't be coming. Okay. All right. So, we have a slew of minutes to approve. Does anybody have any questions on any of them or have a desire for us to take them individually or as a group? There were 5 sets. August 31st, September 8th, September 9th, September 13th. Oh, and then also August 19th.
There's 6.
Oh,
I had
6
6.
and August 26th. Yes, there's 6.
19, 26, 31st.
So there's
13.
like,
Yep.
there's like 2 regular full
There's
warrant
2 regular meetings and 4 subcommittee meetings.
Should they be noted as such?
All of them, all of our postings are posted as both subcommittee and warrant committee meetings in case we hit quorum because most people have been coming to all of them. So,
I mean, I looked at them, I had some comments, but they got fixed. And I don't have any other comments. I don't know if anyone else looked at it.
and then I added today some timestamps and spots.
Yeah, I thought that was
That
great.
That was a great idea.
That's a
Yeah.
great idea, yeah.
So I went through there, on one of my posts on Facebook, when I had posted the video, somebody had commented and asked whether or not we had anything that had timestamps that would help people find things. So what I did this morning, I went into the minutes and basically recorded every like
Yeah.
15, 20 minutes to
Yeah,
just stick a timestamp to give people a general idea. So all of these have that.
that's really helpful as a reference because we get so many questions of people asking.
And I figure it'll help us go back too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Really for us.
It was good to look at it because it kind of reviewed all the meetings.
Well, and I think
As
it,
you
well,
read
but-
through the minutes, it was like going to the meeting again.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was good.
yeah, I mean, my plan, I mean, I'm gonna ask Nick to post these right away so that way we can share them. Because I think for people that don't want to sit there and watch 2 hours at a time, they could at least peruse the minutes and
Right.
decide which ones they want to watch. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay,
you want a motion
yes,
to approve it?
please, that would be great, Steve.
So I motion that the 2 regular warrant committee minutes. What are the dates again?
So it's, those are September 13th
September 13th
and August 19th.
August 19th. And the 4 subcommittee minutes be approved as submitted.
Second.
So Paul,
Yes.
Newton, and
Yes.
Jill,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
Yeah.
Jeremy has just joined us. If you care to vote on minutes, if you've already reviewed them, you can. If not.
See right up here, buddy.
I was gonna say,
You
you can
just
sit
have
at
to
the
pay,
table.
it just means you have to pay for dinner, that's all.
All right. All right, so next order of business is there's been a bunch of submittals for different fact documents to add. And so I sent everybody a draft today with, and I tried to highlight and green everything that was new because it's just kind of building on the same document. So then I'll just walk through what they were and then if anybody has any comments or questions.
Which one?
So it was on the same email that had the minutes. It's called website outline 9/28/21. So the first new one is in the site selection. So that one is SBC meeting 9/16/20. And it says review of all member opinions, votes, public Q&A and selection vote. So that was that is the actual YouTube video to that meeting on September 16th, the night that they did. It's a long one.
You sent that today, huh?
It was
I
on the
think I've
same
gone
email as
through.
the minutes.
Yes, it was one of the attachments.
The attachment.
Oh, that one, yeah, okay, yeah.
Anybody have an issue with adding that one? In the site selection area? And then in the final design preferred option area, it's actually, it's still the schematic design report. It's just a call out to pages 39 to 41. Because that is the specific, so it says discussion of space summary. We'll start on those pages. It explains each area and why that area is over the MSBA guideline. So just calling out those pages. So the financial review, do you want to go through those, Steve? I think most of these were.
Remind me what we have.
So we
there.
have
Oh, okay. this
district and
is the-
professional teams' responses to the MSBA comments on the PSR. February 8th, 2021, reference to cost in appendix A on page 215. I think we talked about adding that one like almost right after the last.
Yeah,
meeting,
these
right?
are, I think these are just appendices to the schematic. I don't know which one it is, but to one of the submissions, every time they make a submission, there's comments from the MSBA and they're required to respond to them. So that's what this document is. It's one
Right.
of those.
Yeah, it's appendix A of the schematic design report.
Right.
So it has all the comments on the PSR.
Yeah.
And then the next one is the included and excluded cost subjects to MSBA reimbursement criteria. On page 151 of the schematic design.
Now that is the wonderful spreadsheet.
That's the table
That's,
summary.
yeah, it's like this big non-logical spreadsheet that's got like,
Oh, you can't read it.
yeah.
Is that the same one
Not
that,
the simplified one.
No, it's
This one?
It's the, yeah, it's MSBA's spreadsheet.
The one you circulated.
oh, I was gonna say that's the one that
Yeah, that's
MSBA
one that-
updated for
yeah.
the meeting on Monday.
Yeah, so we
right?
might wanna,
And I defy
you
anybody.
might wanna put the
print
new
it
one
out.
in rather than, I don't know.
Well, actually, I did put the new one in, so do we only need one of these then?
Yeah, you only need the latest.
Okay, so then I guess I'm gonna suggest that we take that one out because the last one in this section is the one that the MSBA changed.
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah.
Alright, I'm gonna delete, so we're gonna not do page
And-
151.
And change for what
They-
purpose? Reimbursement?
They increased the reimbursement.
Yeah,
Rate,
yeah, the
which resulted
reimbursement.
in more reimbursement.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's almost 700,000.
I know, it's pretty good. Okay, so all right, so we'll take that one out and we'll talk about the other one in a minute. So then I think, Steve, this was your learn about CM at risk. Doc, was that something that you got from?
It's not, I don't know,
Yeah.
we don't have a we have a document. on it?
Yeah, well,
I guess,
think-
well, this is a link to the
Yeah.
mass.gov site, service details, learn more about CM at
Oh,
risk.
that's what
this
Christine,
is.
Christine sent that to us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, right. Yeah, that's just a link to a public
Yeah.
website.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, there's one that explains the role of the CM at risk.
right.
yeah, it looks
Yeah.
like there's two links on mass.gov. One is to learn about CM at risk,
Right,
and the
yeah.
other one is on the mass.gov website. A link to the public design and construction information.
Yeah.
Those are both just mass.gov
Yeah.
links.
I don't know if I was just like fishing around, but is one a link to the design bid build too as a comparison?
I think that's in the design.
That's something we're just not down to the comparison
Oh,
section.
okay.
Yes, yeah, these ones I think are more about, these were both links that Christine had sent us when we were at
Yeah,
our last meeting, and we were all going back and forth. It's the same reason why Mike Quinlan's showing up at 6:30, I think, right?
Yes.
Yes, because we were all confused.
Yes.
Yes,
oh,
So
okay,
he's gonna come and explain it to us.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember reading both the,
Yeah, the second link
differences.
is for like the general information and then
Okay.
CM at risk is one of the alternate methods of procurement.
Yep.
Contractors.
okay,
So I think it covers both. Goes into CM at risk.
oh, okay, maybe that's what I was thinking. It was,
okay, then the next one is actually it's the forum presentation that the SBC did last Wednesday. It's their slides. They're up.
Pages 4.
It's,
I'm sorry, where are
The
you?
whole presentation.
oh, it's the one, so it's on here, it's called SBC
Yeah.
Community Forum on Project Cost 9/22/2021. It's the PowerPoint presentation. That,
That actually, you're gonna see again tonight.
right, it's like, it's the first agenda
Oh,
item on the
yeah.
selectmen upstairs.
Yeah,
okay, good.
yeah.
Joining that remotely. I
It was
see the
hard because,
presentation, so I was like,
right.
oh, I have no
I think
idea.
that was like
Yeah, I
totally
know it.
one of those lesson learned things that they needed to have a computer sharing that screen.
Yes.
Because when you were at home, I had no idea what he
No,
had
I
behind it.
didn't know
I
what
know
they were commenting on.
I was
but-
trying to take notes, couldn't go that fast.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
Yeah,
had a
Okay.
scream and something else going and it kind of pieced together a little bit, but.
yeah.
There's a time lag. though.
It was a little rough. Yeah, it was a little rough. And then the last one is the updated project budget, which, so the only difference between the project budget on this link and what is in the pieces of the presentation from last Wednesday is the reimbursement percentage. The MSBA had sent an email back to Medfield, I guess on Friday, letting them know that that it was getting bumped up percentage or so. So it's about I forget the exact number, but something like $640,000.
Yeah,
Six
we're
or
almost
seven.
almost up to like 44% or something. like
Yeah,
that.
it's over like, yeah, it's over,
Yeah.
over 19 million. So, so that's not bad. So that's the updated one. And then, okay, and then the next section, water and sewer. So the first one is the Moody's credit opinion. The section that talks about environmental considerations is called out on page 4. And then the one below that is called measuring what matters, no approach to assessing sovereign climate risk on page 427, because it's referenced on page 4 of the Moody's report. Those were both things that Christine had sent us. After that, and then the next two are things from the schematic design, the niche.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a couple minutes and talk about, there were some documents already on there around the zoning, the zones and the districts and well protection districts. But I met with Mo and Sarah last week. And there's 2 additional documents I want to put into the website. So, and we talked a lot about, this will take a couple minutes, but it's worth sort of, so just the facts. So basically, we talked about the zoning and the bylaws. They confirmed that their understanding that the Mass DEP approved Zone 2 is that, that map that we already have on there, and that it covers 70% of Medfield, and that the Zone 1, the state Zone 1 is a 400-foot construction zone. They also confirmed that the Medfield bylaws have the Aquifer Protection District, and it's made up of primary and secondary aquifers. And it's very similar to that Zone 2. There's a small piece that's sort of wetlands. It's not aquifer, but most of Medfield, 70% of it is considered an aquifer. And then the bylaws have this well protection district, which our bylaws call Zone 1, which is the 2,000-foot radius. So they confirmed all that. They also confirmed that the existing school and the proposed school are not within the well protection district, and that some area of the proposed parking lot and the new relocated soccer field, the full soccer field will be in the well protection district.
Within that 1,000 foot.
Within the 2,000.
2,000, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, 2,000.
yeah. But the actual existing school and the proposed school will be outside of it.
So a part of the parking lot and the soccer field, did you say?
Yes,
Or parts of?
yeah. But the whole soccer field, the new proposed soccer field is gonna be rebuilt. Where it's being rebuilt is in the Zone 2, and part of a parking lot is in Zone 2. It is in the 2,000-foot zone, excuse me.
Is the current field that's there?
Just gonna ask that question.
The
like my mother
the
said.
current field probably is not in the well protection district, because that's where the new school's gonna go.
Gotcha.
The fields.
What about the fields on the other side?
Yeah, all those
On
soccer fields.
the other side,
Like
must
the
be
Medfield youth
Yeah.
soccer
All the-
fields are in it.
already.
Yeah, all those are gonna, are already.
Are
Yeah,
already in
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Or what now?
They're already in
They're
there.
in the well protection district.
But like the Medfield
a-
youth
No, I
soccer
understand.
ones,
I'm
yeah.
just trying to understand.
Yeah.
So the new field and the existing fields of the soccer fields are all both in the same category.
They're both in the well protection district, right?
Yeah.
So and the Wheelock School parcel, the whole parcel is within the town's primary aquifer district, which, like we said, the aquifer district covers 70% of it.
Right.
So
They could help it, yeah.
the GIS site, she confirmed had an error in it with the 400-foot, radius. When you click on that, it shows a bigger, it's outside the 2,000 foot, which we thought that was an error. And then the new town bylaws, they did confirm the new town bylaws around stormwater management that were adopted. I don't know exactly when, but recently. Those are more restrictive than the state, Mass DEP, and federal regulations. So then on environmental partners, this environmental partners letter that they put together, it was discussed at the last town meeting. So I asked Mo, what, because it was addressed to him, so I figured he had knowledge. He said his memory is that the town has been using environmental partners for water and wetland issues since at least the 1970s. He found that out because he happened to be talking to them about what they want to do up at the town dump. And they said, oh yeah, well, back in the 70s when we were consulted, so they've been doing work for the town for quite a while.
Right.
They were involved in 2003 with the zoning amendments to the bylaws for the watershed protection district overlay map and zoning map. And then more recently, they've been hired to determine the best location of wells within Medfield. And in particular, they did the testing related to the siting of the new wells in the vicinity of the existing wells 3 and 4. They did that testing so that his point to me was they know our water issues better than him and anyone, any institution knows. They know more about our water issues than any institution. And he, on the letter, he said that it was a preliminary letter. This is the letter that's dated March. A preliminary letter based on proposed paper plans, basically, because they hadn't done the schematic design at that point. And if the site moves forward, obviously there'll be more detailed plans, including site plans and stormwater management, will be developed and presented to the planning board for review and approval. I asked him about the existing Wheelock site. He said that the existing parking and stormwater system at Wheelock was done in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
The system does not currently treat stormwater or recharge it to the site. He said there's no stormwater, so there's no stormwater treatment on site. And any stormwater that is collected is being sent off-site through, the sewer and stormwater pipes. So, basically, what's being proposed up there, we looked at and this is one of the documents I want to add in the schematic design. There's a sustainability section. And they talk about the different areas of sustainability. One of them is water. And so they're targeting a LEED V4 silver certification. Jeremy probably knows what that is. The project is designed to increase the quality of water that's returning to the ground from the present condition. And a goal of the project important goal, because of its location, is designed to improve the quality and the quantity of stormwater infiltration on site
Sit.
over current conditions. So they're targeting a rainwater management credit. It basically offers credits for certain rainfall events, like the 85th or 90th percentile type events. And the stormwater is proposed to be captured and routed to 5 decentralized stormwater management subsurface infiltration systems and 1 rain garden. And that they're still going to do some more analysis to see if they can achieve that credit. But I guess at this point they think it's positive. And then there's the other document is the niche engineering letter.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
So that system that you just described, that is in the current,
Schematic design document.
it's in the current cost?
Yes.
Oh, yes, yeah, all this is.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that going to be done anyways? And maybe in the future, as one of the town capital items?
Well, what I just described is the whole site, what
Right.
they're trying to do.
Right.
There's the existing Wheelock School. That was what I described earlier. So that's the piece that was done in the 60s or 70s.
Right.
You're saying that they have a
But-
proposed
but
update.
They're gonna, the cost of that is included in the
Right.
budget. to
I think his
upgrade.
question
if it
is it
wasn't-
in the current capital plan, the
Yeah.
facilities thing?
In other words, if you
that-
I
never
don't know.
you never
I don't
built
know
the
the-
school,
yeah, I don't
you'd
know.
still be doing that in the future.
Yeah, I don't know if it's in the current plan, but it's certainly something
Okay.
that needs to be
Mhm.
addressed.
Mhm.
Then the niche engineering letter basically says that there's new stormwater drainage systems are proposed to address the quality, the quantity, the rate, the volume, and the quality of stormwater, which would be constructed for the new school and the parking lot areas. It's designed to meet all local, state, federal regulations and require quantity and quality mitigation measures. It's a closed drain system, and new parking lots would consist of catch basins and drain manholes with stormwater conveyed via high-density pipes. The new system would consist of a network of drain manholes and pipes. Roof drains from the new school would connect to the system. The stormwater would be directed to subsurface infiltration systems located in strategic areas throughout the site. And then prior to discharge and infiltration, system will have to be treated to address quality by directing the stormwater through something called a storm scepter model. You're probably familiar with that.
Takes the routes out,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. So those are the 2 additional documents that, I wanted to.
And
add
that's
to the-
all in the current costs. But
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
documents aren't listed here in this compilation with hot links. You're adding them?
They
Or
are.
Yeah,
should-
yeah.
They're
Are
the
they
ones
last
that
2?
say, they're the last 2 in this section, the
Okay.
niche engineering and the sustainable design. So
Gotcha.
both of them are just call outs to page numbers that are inside the schematic design report.
Did he have any quantification of what the credit might be, or it's just a?
No, that was not his, that was not his special, he's not a, MSBA credit guru, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the lead,
It's really an
there's a lot of
MSBA.
different things that can go into that, and that is one of them, so.
Does it come from the MSBA or does it come from other? No, it comes from.
National certification.
Yeah.
No.
Energy efficient or clean energy.
Is it like ongoing? Like it would be something that would go towards operating or?
Yeah, I mean, when you build a building that way that has LEED certification, yes, it would be more energy efficient in the long run.
The credit itself, is it like one time usually? Do you
The
know?
credit is like the scoring of it, so you get the actual scale of the LEED certification,
Oh, okay.
like, the levels, is level 4.
Level 4, silver.
So level 3 might, you need a certain score to get that, level 4, you need another score.
Oh, okay.
So this would be one of the things that would go towards that scoring.
And there's no
Gotcha.
remuneration, so to
Not a
speak. It's
financial.
just you put the sticker on
se,
your
it's not
windows.
So
So
for money.
if you meet a certain
Yeah.
standard in the MSBA, you're gonna get a certain percentage.
So it may have some.
They
impact.
want you to do and you get credit.
We're gonna
So
send
they give you
that
points for
Will
that.
you
okay.
have some time to look at this?
I should have had you.
Sorry,
I came in like a live conversation.
Steve, you
I
said
just noted that
Keith.
I'd like to really get some input from with that experience. It's a great summary and having that expertise. is
Right, so
great.
far it all sounds accurate.
Yeah, and I did inquire about the question about, other committees sort of weighing in on this project at this point. And, like the planning board, and, what Sarah described was like, every committee has their own procedures and the way they go about doing their work. And planning board has a certain list of documents that they need to get before they review something. There's a whole checklist of stuff. And that usually, that hasn't been done yet. That's sort of the next future phases. And so it hasn't been prepared at this stage. And, obviously their reviews will come and they'll be, they'll look at the rules and regulations. They know anytime there's a project in town, they have to approve it, make sure it's in accordance with the laws and regulations. So they'll do that. That was it.
So I'm sorry, the conversation was all with Mo and Sarah,
Sarah,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
and they were referencing either environmental partners and niche documents.
Yeah,
And
well,
Rob-
yes, yeah, the niche letter and then the
Yep.
sustainability write-up in this schematic design submission. One other quick thing, that was, I don't know, I think we were gonna add this, is there was a question that came in about the archaeological district.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
no, I have that, yeah.
Okay, maybe I'll just cover, because Sarah, at the same meeting, we asked her this question. There was a question from a resident who asked a question about, how does this district operate? She hadn't heard about it, and so there's a particular chapter in our bylaws that deals with it, and there's a map. It's not a GIS map. It's just a paper map. Yeah, and it just has.
But we have a scan of it.
It has like shaded areas, A, B, C, D, where it has, these sort of districts, and she happens to live over in Carmen Circle, which is north of El, just north of El. And so she was curious, like, did it impact her and her butters and some people thinking of doing some development in the neighborhood. But it really runs sort of south of Elm down through the Wheelock site and then sort of southeast from there. So yeah, towards the river, that Minebrook River. So
The map kind of looks like somebody dripped their grape jelly on it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's one of your links later.
Yeah, it is.
So that map we're gonna put in the
Yes.
on the
that's
website.
what it was, Yeah. All right, so in the sidewalks and busing section, we actually had talked about these before, but we didn't have the links before. So it's the list of safety streets as defined by the Medford Public Schools, a section of the bus contract. And then I still don't have the link here for you, the number of families with kids. I did get the document today, but I sent a couple of follow-up questions to Jeff and Mike to make sure I was reading it correctly. So we do have that. So they basically did a spreadsheet that has the number of families with kids at Memorial, families at Wheelock, and then families at Dale. And then, so then you can figure out the unique families. So that way, if you assumed that the kids that are currently at Memorial and currently at Wheelock were actually on one site together, how many families does that add? Or i.e. how many cars does that add? I guess I'd have pick up or drop off. So before I give that to everybody, I just want to make sure I read it right. So I sent them a follow-up question, but we should have that for next time. For the park and rec section, the community survey results that Jill had from the last meeting. That link is there, and then Kevin sent me the presentation that they used in January 2020 that goes along with that. So those are both there. For the project comparisons, we've got the from the community forum, the projects that Mr. Quinlan had put up, so that's there. And then there were the two documents that you sent me, there's the estimated cost for new elementary schools, 16 to 17. There were the two
Yeah,
documents that you
so,
sent.
so there was an analysis sent in to us by Tom Powers. Cost per. He had done analysis around elementary school costs. And
Cost per grade.
cost per grade.
Right.
And
Remember that.
it selected certain schools to look at. And so what I did is I went back to the MSBA site and looked at everything, because I think he had done from 17 on. I looked at 16 forward and just looked at new construction, not ad reno. And then just put it all in a spreadsheet and then did the calculations, and so one of the problems with his analysis is he looked at he went past the schematic design phase, so he had the final cost after it had been bid out, which was obviously lower than the schematic design numbers
Right,
in a lot of cases by up to 20%. And then the number he was using for Medfield, he had the full project as opposed to, and he was comparing it to just construction costs. So anyway, I've reformatted all that and put it in an analysis, and that's what the document is. But it's all based upon public information. So
Right.
you can look at it. Other than that, the more recent schools in there came from Mike, because they're not on the website, so.
The website's also a little bit, it takes a while for them to catch up. For
Yeah.
instance, they still have our numbers from the previous
Yeah.
phase, which is February.
Yeah,
Mm.
so that's what that is. It's I didn't bring a copy with me, but I can,
Well, I figure we'll probably end up talking about that in more detail next week when we go
Yeah.
through the Q&A.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
But is it to be posted?
yes, it's on the list to be posted, yeah. And then just a couple more, the Wheelock site history, the archaeological map we just talked about, the grape jelly spill is there. And then I think this is a repeat from the top, but we're just putting things in the multiple sections. It's the district and professional team responses from May 22nd that was already up there. And then there's just a page reference inside the preferred schematic report from 2320, which is the environmental site on pages 10 and 11. And then it has the geo-environmental reports that are appendix G are the Wheelock ones. And also page 14 is the Wheelock section. So those are really just page call outs to the document, the PSR. And then there in the Dale section, there is the repairs list that Jeff and Mike went over with us last week at the Future of Dale meeting that we had. And then there is the legal opinion that Jeff and Jess referred to also at that meeting that they had the school's attorney do to write out exactly what the transfer process is. If Dale was not a school and it needed to come back, so that's the legal document that they're referring to, so the actual letter is there. And then the last one is again the same PSR about the environmental site on pages 10, 11, but this calls out the appendices that refer to Dale. So appendix F is Dale, and page numbers 11 and 12 in the PSR also refer to Dale, but and that is the end of our current list.
Done an incredible job.
You want a motion?
Yes, I would like a motion, and then we're gonna ask Mr. Quinlan questions.
So I move that we incorporate those documents onto the Warrant Committee website.
Second.
Sorry, I'm declining whatever call Nick had.
Oh, it's not important.
I don't know,
Bring
since we're
milk
still
home.
recording, I didn't bring anything, I think. Okay, I'm sorry, so who motioned?
So I motion, Jeremy second.
Okay, all right, Bob,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Newton,
Yes.
Yes,
Jones. And
Yes.
Steve, yes, and I'm a yes, okay. All right, so I will get some time with Nick and get him to post. So, next thing on our agenda before we go upstairs to talk to the selectmen was, I believe that Mr. Quinlan here has come to answer questions that we were all sounding very confused about.
Can you introduce yourselves, because I don't know you all. What would you like to discuss? The topic du jour.
Well, I think we would like to understand, we understand that the pricing that was done for the budget, project scope and budget, was based upon CMR pricing.
Correct.
But what we'd like to understand is, once the project, if the project is approved, and if it moves forward, and if the town approves the project, what happens in the next phase? And in terms of, the way things get, any decisions that get made around the bid process, and have some of those decisions already been made, or are they going to be made? When do they get made? And what are they? And how does it, what are the differences between, what things that we have to consider?
Yeah. It sounded previously also like you wanted a little bit of background on DBB versus CMR.
Yeah.
Do you want me to start there, just high
Yeah.
level,
Yeah,
before
yeah.
I get into the specifics of Medfield?
Sure.
Okay. There are two ways to procure construction for municipalities in Massachusetts and for the state as well, but they are design bid build, otherwise known as Chapter 149. And then there's CM at risk or construction manager at risk, otherwise known as Chapter 149A. So you'll hear us throw a lot of those terms out. Typical Chapter 149 procurement method is basically low bid. You design the building, you bid it out, and whoever's the lowest qualified bidder must be awarded the project. And then there are also a series of what are called filed sub-bidders. In Massachusetts, there's certain trades that have separate bidding processes called filed sub-bidding, where those sub-bidders file their own bids. The lowest from each of those categories get rolled into the general contractor's bid, unless it's qualified that they won't work with certain contractors. They have the option to do that. So that's basically, you are buying, in essence, you're buying the documents. It's on the drawings, it's in the specifications, that's what you're buying, and that's it. So everything beyond that is a change order, and there's a whole process for that down the line. So as construction has gotten more and more complex throughout time, in the private sector, CM at risk became a more favorable way to bid projects, especially larger projects that are more complicated, et cetera. And then eventually the state incorporated that into their own procurement norms. So CM at risk is a different process where instead of buying a set of documents, you're basically buying a team. And so it's more of a qualifications-based procurement where you're evaluating and interviewing a team before you have the project completely designed. And you're bringing them on in the essence of trying to get feedback from them. They help with constructability reviews during design. They assist the designer on how things should go together, detailing, making sure the documents are tight and they've got everything, all their T's crossed and I's dotted. They're providing pricing feedback during that process as the town evaluates options, things like that. But because the project isn't fully designed, you're basically engaging a contractor for pre-construction services alone to start. And then when the project does go out to bid, it's an open book process. So they show you each of their trades, all of the subcontractors that bid, outside of the filed sub bidders, you are not required to take the lowest bid, but, unless there's a reason not to, that's usually the way it goes, but the bid, who the bid goes out to for the non-filed sub bidders is also more controlled by the CM. So you know who sub bidders are that you're bidding the project to. You're have far more control over those trades. Filed sub bid process is essentially the same in both essences because of the procurement. So an electrical sub bidder on a Chapter 149 project and an electrical sub bidder process on CM at risk is going to be basically the same cast of characters.
Quick question. In the DBB, do you, the owner project, maybe the CMR themselves, do they have control over who those subs are?
No, it's a low bid process. The only control you have with DBB is pre-qualification. So pre-qualification, which given the size of the project, we're required to do. We recommend it sometimes even when it's under the state limits, but basically we have to run a pre-qualification process to make sure that the people bidding on the project are qualified to do that. That involves a whole series of an RFP to go out and an RFQ to go out. They supply their qualifications, we review, get references, we do financial checks, things like that. And then each sub bidder gets a score, and then that gets published as like, these are the only people that can bid on the job. And that can get, sometimes people don't like how we score things and they get bounced out. But generally speaking, that's the only way you can control who's bidding on the job.
Mhm.
Once that's out, you have to take the low bidder. So you can't say,
Right.
Unless there's a reason why they're not qualified. In theory, they should be qualified based on their pre-qualification. But say for instance, usually they withdraw, but say for instance, you have, one contractor A bids 60 million, contractor B bids 75 million, contractor C bids 76 million. And you're like, wow, that's a big gap. Oftentimes they'll just withdraw because it feels like they missed something, but you could probably say that may not be, the wisest thing because there's clearly a big gap between the low bidder and the others. So those are the things we look for, but typically, if you do choose the second bidder, it's actually happened to Medfield when we bid one project where,
Is it for this building?
no,
Oh, okay.
no, on a previous project, the low bidder, this is years ago, this was on DPW before. There was a bidder that was deemed to be not responsible. And so we chose the second bidder. And the first bidder ended up going out of business, by the way, a few years later, a company called TLT Construction. And so there are ways to avoid that, but you're not getting to the third bidder, but you have to justify it because the first bidder could protest to the AG and say, to the IG and say, we want, no, it's the AG, I always get those mixed up. And say, they threw us out unfairly, and then there's a whole process around that. So we have to be very careful about that process. So that's the major difference. So if you think about it, DBB, you're buying what's on the drawings, what's in the specs. CMR, you're buying a team and you're buying their expertise and their collaboration during the design process going into bid. And then you negotiate what's called a GMP, or guaranteed maximum price. Within that, they don't see them at risk, so to speak. They're not taking that risk on just for the heck of it. So they build into their GMP contingencies, their own contingencies, and different buckets to allot for that risk. And so that all has to be negotiated through the GMP negotiation process, and then agreed upon. With Medfield, we have voted to pursue CMR. But if, during this whole process, we decide that we can't negotiate a fair contract, we can always go back to DBB as a fallback. So that's sort of the.
You haven't picked anybody yet, right?
No. So
You
if-
voted on a process.
your question, then getting back to your question. if the project gets approved, the next steps would be, the first thing we have to do is we would file an application with the IG's office to approve us to go to CMR. I've never had a project that got denied. The second step would be with qualifications and interview for RFQ for CMs, construction managers. So basically, we would put an RFQ out to see who's interested. I can tell you, I know we will get a lot. The last job we did that for my project in Ashland, we got 11 CMs and similar size projects. I guarantee you we'll probably get those same 11, if not more.
You
So
have to
we-
entertain all of them?
Yes, but only to a certain point. They submit their calls, we review them, and then we shortlist. So if we had 11, we typically shortlist of 3 or 4 that we want to interview. And then of those 3 or 4, and we go through a similar rating process with them, you know, we look at their financials, we look at their team, we look at their schedule, availability. You know, all of that gets evaluated, and then we shortlist to 3 or 4. We decide who to interview, we do interviews. But because it's a qualifications-based procurement, we can select whoever we want. So it's not about a low number. You know, we do factor in, we ask them for their fees, we ask them for general conditions, and their contingencies and how they're viewing the project, but that's all negotiable.
Does MSBA get a vote, or is that just an SBC choice?
It's a local decision. Yep.
And so what went into the,
No, one thing, just to clarify, any of that would be, any selection we would make would need to be reviewed by them. They would, you know, if for some
They have
reason-
to stamp it,
Yeah.
so you
Yeah.
pick it, then they have to approve it, and then you sign the contract, kind of thing.
so as I understand it, there's, there can be, you know, when you do negotiate this.
GMP.
Or, yeah, the CMR or whatever the final, whoever that ultimate party, contractor is. That there could be a difference in pricing, right, which is just an estimate at this point. And then maybe there would be.
So we would hire a CM with, had nothing to do with the project price.
Right,
Right?
right.
We would be able to, at that time, they would give us estimates for their, fixed estimates for their general conditions. General requirements, contingencies, and fee, both pre-con fee and then total fee for the project. So all of that we would factor in. We would compare them across all of the ones that we interview and say, you know, look at the financials as part of that package. And then, you know, then we would negotiate. Let's say we really liked the, you know, team A, but team B had much lower numbers. We might go back to team A and say, look, we like you, but if you can't bring these numbers down, you know, we negotiate back and forth, that type of thing.
Yeah.
As we would with any contract.
So there's usually some positive savings from the pricing that we do now, not a big number. but
Not, I mean, it's not major in terms of how it impacts, because the big numbers is the cost of the job.
Yeah.
Those are the trade costs, as we call them, right?
Right.
So that's all the subcontractors, not the CM. So, you know, at that stage, we don't have any negotiating power over that, because that all gets bid out.
Right.
So.
But the CM is conducting that bid.
The
They're
CM,
doing, they're putting the RFQs together for those bids for construction costs.
yes, in conjunction with the OPM.
So when
Right.
I look at this spreadsheet on the MSBA website that shows for the same school, the SD pricing, schematic design pricing. And then when it ultimately, you know, goes out to bid, the bid price, and they have DBB next to the price. And there's like a 20% variance between. schematic
Yeah,
design.
I'd have to see what you're referring to. That number seems really high in the end. But so typically you know, it's an opinion. So you ask 10 people, you'll get 11 different answers. But the premium that we generally advise our clients on right now.
Yeah.
From DBB to CM is about 5%.
5%.
And oftentimes that comes back at the end of the job, or some portion of it comes back at the end of the job, because with CMs, they never end up using all the contingency that they say they're going to have at the beginning, because again, they're risk avoidance. They're just trying to cover their own, you know, tuchus. And we have to be very careful about that, because there's nothing worse than we've seen this happen many times where we go down a CM route and, they're conservative, overly conservative. And then there comes a time when we're over budget, we gotta cut something, or something the town may want. And writing a check at the end of the job saying, hey, look, we're under budget, but we cut something, that to me, that's not being the hero that they think they're being.
This is what I was talking about. So these are the years in the different schools. So yellows are DBBs and those are CMRs. You could see like for the DBBs, there was a bigger percentage.
Yeah,
It's a schematic
but
design.
just looking, the tough part with just looking at those numbers is that you're not looking at what changed between SD and the bid, right? So
They could have changed scope.
change scope,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, like it's tough just to look at the
But
numbers.
it was interesting that because CMRs, it was very.
But
little
that's,
change.
that's exactly the reason why you go CMR DBB, right? CMR is supposed to be a more, precise look at it. Now, DBB, we're using a cost estimator, and not that they're not close, but they're not as close to the market as a CM, right?
Yeah.
So our cost estimators get information on bids, and they use that information to decide how they're going to price, future work. But the CMs are always working with subcontractors, and they have a much closer feel of what the street will price out at. And so that's the other benefit of bringing them on, is that you're getting a more accurate picture. Now, the downside to that is you don't have the leverage on bid day. So the benefit of the DBB in a weak market is you could get someone who's just gonna let any work.
Yeah.
And they're gonna go overly aggressive on it, and they're gonna make sure that they win the job because they need the work.
Yeah.
And that's when you get, a benefit to the town, as long as they don't go too far to the point where they may put themselves in trouble.
But the environment we're in now,
It's nowhere near that.
we're not in that type.
We're in the
not even-
opposite.
we're not even close to that.
Yeah.
So that sounds like,
Hyperinflation.
sounds like a reasonable
Yeah.
decision, yeah.
At what point do they come up with a guaranteed maximum?
GMP.
Yes.
So the GMP is when the final bid documents have all been produced and they get put out to bid. And then the contractor will receive all the bids from all the different trades. We do what's called de-scoping. We go through each trade and we say, make sure, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? Like with all the non-filed subs. So we make sure that they've got everything covered and they get their sort of best and final. And then the contractor makes a recommendation to the OPM in the town, like, these are the contractors we're proposing. And then there's then as long as they're okay, then they're
Add 'em up
accepted,
and
right?
that's it.
And the filed sub bid, again, going back to that process, is we're still required to take the low bidder
Right.
in that
The
process.
responsible,
Yeah. The
responsible,
lowest responsible bidder, yeah.
right.
Like you indicated that if you couldn't reach an agreement with the CM on that GMP, you could pivot to
Correct.
DBB. So that it's not a,
It's not off the table.
no, and it's not a difficult process to pivot, or it's not time
It's
consuming.
not easy.
Okay.
But it may be beneficial depending on the scenario. I'm just, my only point about bringing that up is that that's always an option. It's not that we are, we're locked in. It's not, the
Mhm.
question is, will it be an easy option? It's always a little bit difficult to change that midstream.
Yeah.
But there may come a time when it might be necessary, depending on.
We all of a sudden went into a recession in the next 2 or 3 months.
Right, we may decide, yeah, if all of a sudden the market looks like it's, super hungry instead of, fat, then we might, reverse course. And go back to a straight design bid build.
So assuming if the project did get, when would that decision be made? Would that be like a January, February, when
When
would
would we
that,
select the CM?
yeah, make that decision?
So-
one or the
so-
other, Right.
But when would you
December,
start?
December,
when
we
we
would
just-
put an RFQ out on the street, once we got the approval
Yeah,
from the state to go CM, we would put an RFQ on the street and we would start that process. And so we'd be looking at selecting a CM, like maybe late January, early February.
okay,
So
Because you
I don't
want, you want them on board early.
Right.
that's the whole,
Yeah.
that's the whole benefit. If you're gonna pay the premium, you
Yeah.
wanna make sure that you're getting them on. as early as possible in the design process. They're reviewing the documents. They're making sure that, you know, and they also will be critical in the next phase, which is called design development. They'll be critical in assembling the cost estimates for that. So right now, we have the OPM's cost estimate and the designer's cost estimate, and then we reconcile them. With the CM process, we would have the CM's estimate and the designer's estimate, and we would reconcile those. So we always have, you know, two estimates that we're working off of, making sure we're seeing the project the same way.
Are there companies out there that exclusively are CM at risk companies that that's all they do?
Yep. And there is, in the opposite, there are some that are exclusively GC. And then there are a
Right.
few that straddle the line. There's
Okay.
not a ton that straddle the line.
Right.
And I will say, one of the other benefits of CM is you're getting a very different class of contract, especially on larger jobs. There are probably 4, maybe 5 general contractors in this market that I would be comfortable with performing a job of this size and complexity. And the tough part is, if we chose to go that route and they're busy and they don't decide to pursue the job, and we're down to 2 or 3, we're selecting, you know, that becomes a bit of a, we want to make sure we have enough of a bidding pool. And the tough part is, there's only so many GCs in this market that I'm comfortable are qualified enough to do the job, which is part of the reason why I voted to pursue CM.
I hate to cut the
So this is
conversation
very
short,
helpful.
but we're
Thank you.
just
Yeah.
sitting
Right.
upstairs.
Motion to adjourn?
Yeah, so, well, I'm gonna let Bob make his motion. Is there a second? Okay, all right, so, yes,
Yes.
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 And then anybody out in computer land can join the selectmen's meeting. We're going upstairs.
Oh.